Hello, everybody, and welcome to our last week of class. This week we're going to be talking about military specific types of issues, particularly deployment and reintegration. We have a guest speaker tonight. That's really I'm hoping y'all are going, yeah, cool, we have a guest speaker, yes. Well, and she's awesome. She is in the program at Regent University with me, one of my colleagues from there. She lives in the DC area, and her husband is in the military. He's actually stationed in the Pentagon right now, which is kind of cool in and of itself, I think. So I'm going to turn it over to her and have her share a little bit about the deployment and reintegration process. And so we have Corey Schoenberg.
Hi guys, I'm Corey. Thanks for letting me join you tonight. It's a real honor to get to share with you. Just to let you know a little bit about me. So I am a licensed professional counselor, but I also happen to be a military spouse. My husband is in the Air Force, and as soon as we got married, he commissioned into the Air Force, and so we've really done the whole military journey. And he's been in for about 14 years now, and has just made Lieutenant Colonel in the Air Force. And so our military journey has been very different. And that's one of the things that I think you'll find among military families and among families who had deployments is that there really is a huge, vast span of experience and the amount of times that individuals are deployed. And so in my particular family, my husband has been fortunate enough to only be deployed once, and he was in a non-combat zone, and it was only a 4-month long deployment. But we've had very good friends who've been in other branches of the military, especially like the Army and Marines. They get deployed so much more frequently. And so we have very dear friends who have been on year-long deployments 3 or 4 times, and that has been so challenging for their families. And so just walking alongside them and seeing what that is like. One of the biggest challenges of the deployment, I think, the most high crisis times when it comes to these military families is right prior to when the deployment takes place, and then right when the military member comes back from the deployment. It seems like during the deployment itself is probably the lower stress time, even though there's the day-to-day stressors and things that come up that is so challenging without your spouse there. People really seem to get into a rhythm and a routine and just begin to function in a way that works for them and works for their family. But the dread of anticipating that deployment and counting down of the days is so intense and so emotionally strenuous. And then when family members come back, it's equally challenging because now you have to relearn life, and that is especially difficult for families who have young children. And so one of the things that I've seen just among my friends is that uh, children have a really hard time embracing the family member that's been gone. A lot of times this is a really big attachment disruption, and so the bonding has not taken place, especially among young children, and there can be a lot of resentment from the child towards the parent that was gone, and then just the feelings of guilt that are associated with that, and then the marital tension that creates is very, very hard, and it takes a long time to work through it. And many people think that, oh, great, your family member is back. It should be wonderful now that the deployment is over. But really, that's very oftentimes when the very hard work begins, that the deployment was the less stressful time. It's coming back and that reintegration that is so hard. Many family members many people who are deployed, while some are not involved in combat, many of them do experience very stressful situations. And while some don't develop full post-traumatic stress disorder, there is so much trauma associated with deployments and things that they're exposed to, conditions, situations, seeing people, the way that people in other countries have to live and the way that they have to survive is very, very hard. And so many of our service members come back and they do have problems with trauma and just trying to recover from that, but they're also very resistant to wanting to let people know that something is wrong. And I believe the culture in the military is really changing, where there's a lot more support. It's talked about a lot more frequently, but for many service members, they are so reluctant to want to say, this is happening to me, something's not right, I'm not myself anymore. And so they really struggle through a lot of different problems and are resistant to getting treatment and counseling. And so that leads to major family discord. It can often lead to divorce and parenting problems. And unfortunately, veterans commit suicide every single day, and it is a big problem for the military. So we need counselors and lay people to really rally around families, especially in the reintegration stage. When they're coming back, because it is so very challenging and stressful. So, thank you so much for letting me share with you today.
All right, that was awesome, and thank you for that, Corey. I really wanted to utilize her because logistically it happened to work out, but also I wanted to be able to have that sense of having someone that's experienced it, because I can remember the first time that I had, and if we were in class, I'd be like, okay, raise your hands if you're uh, military, and let's talk about this. And maybe we'll do that in class when we meet together. But um, I remember the first time I heard about reintegration being a problem, and I was like, I'm kind of scratching my head. I'm thinking, dude, my wife comes back home. I'm excited. This is awesome. Yeah, but boy, are there some challenges in terms of being able to sort out some of these details. And what also can complicate it, and I think Corey mentioned this and touched on this a little bit, is if the person is traumatized, and even if they don't have full-blown PTSD, they're oftentimes at least been exposed to some extremely difficult and stressful situations and circumstances. Also, when you're working with military families and dealing with these issues, it's good to know that be familiar with the different branches. Each one has their own set of rules and languages and abbreviations and all that. And some overlap, sure, but you really, if you're going to work with military a significant amount, making that kind of mistake in terms of saying, somebody that's in the Air Force, you say, "Oh, you're in the Army, right?" Or, "Oh, second session, it was the Army you're in?" Yeah, no, 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 don't make that mistake. That's a relationally lethal, possibly mistake to make. But also, so be familiar with the culture of military in general, but also the specific nuances of the military branch that the person is in. Um, there are there has been quite an increase in families seeking counseling. Why? Good question. I think there's a few reasons, and probably some of the more prominent, prevalent reasons are things like the stigma. And stigma, yep, right here we go. So the stigma is a little bit less intense. So the stigma is improving and better, which is going to increase the number of people seeking counseling. And you have more people that are in need of it because of the massive amounts of people that have been traumatized because of our recent conflicts in the Middle East in general. I mean, we've got Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran, and I mean, we've got all kinds of, it's not like it's not simple. It's not like there's been one incident or one event. There's stuff going on all the time. Um, let's see. I named a few of the kind of cultural things that stand out that would be what I would consider um, kind of universal to any or most military, at least to some degree. Um, Although one branch of the military might emphasize sacrifice, and another one might emphasize loyalty more, whatever. So there's just little nuances you need to be familiar with that. And also, by the way, this is not the way the world works. This is not the way our world works. I don't mean that like a put down that's at all. I'm just saying the military works this way, and normal life, civilian life works this way. It's just not how either world you can't operate. You can't operate as a civilian in the military world, and it's difficult for those guys to come back and operate as a civilian after having been in the military for a long time. Um, and at the same time, I probably said this throughout this class. We've talked about resilience on and off, and I just want to continue to remind you that there are many people that come back and they bounce back very quickly, which is, to bounce back, resilience, right? The technical definition of, yeah, bouncing back. That's really what resilience means. So there's a very large percentage of people that bounce back quickly that showed to be very resilient, and so we're optimistic about that. We do have a decent chunk of people that struggle, and even some that commit suicide or homicide as a result of PTSD struggles and symptoms and pain. And so these are very real. I mean, you can't look at one guy and say, "Well, your buddy over here came back and he's fine. What the heck's wrong with you?" And see, that's what they feel. Those are the kinds of things oftentimes that will run through their head. And your job is to help them get rid of those thoughts, not reinforce those thoughts. Um, so thinking back to, as Corey was talking to us, some of the specifics that the textbook kind of lays out. So if you're a parent and you're that non-deployed parent, so you're at home with kids and your spouse, and I've been real careful to not say be gender specific, right? Because sometimes it's the mom that's deployed and sometimes it's the dad that's deployed. So you're the parent that stays home. Well, you have little routines with your kids. You have some fun bantering kind of stuff that you do that's just between you and that kid. You have discipline processes. You have scheduling issues going on that you are managing and controlling and doing and dealing with. Uh, the parent comes back and they're like, why is little Johnny doing that? He didn't used to do that. Yeah, well, you've been gone 6 months. Now he does that. And here's what I'm doing to work with him on it. Well, I think we should do this instead of that. Whoa, slow down, time out. You ain't been here, buddy or honey, whichever it is. I mean, you've got to negotiate those things and work those things out. Paying the bills, which is, like, well, duh, really? Yeah. And there would be certain circumstances that the person deployed could pay bills online. And so that's obviously something that's negotiated. But there are situations where, yeah, I'm out in a tent in the desert and I am not really paying any bills anytime soon. Sorry. Um, so domestic duties, who think about simple, we're talking just normal operations kinds of stuff, right? Who washes the dishes? Who folds the clothes? Who washes the clothes? Who vacuums? Who cleans the toilet? Well, who mows the lawn? Who weed eats? Well, if whoever stayed home does all that, right? So it's like, oh, so however it was once divided up is no more. So the added responsibility can be very overwhelming, especially if there's children, and the more children and the younger they are, the harder it is. Um, then when the person comes back, all of this stuff, all these things have to be worked through. Um, I've heard people say I felt like I had to find my place in this family again, and it's like, yeah, you did. I mean, that's exactly right. You have to find your place in the family. And sometimes it feels like for them that they have to push their way back in to find their place in the family. It's not an easy and smooth thing oftentimes. Um, the person who's there at home does have independence, and what I mean by that is we're not. You have children. If you have children, if you have children, you're there, right? You can't just leave up and leave. You have little kids in the house. But the kinds of decisions that you make, um, uh, purchase, what you're going to purchase at the grocery store, when you're going to go to the grocery store, those kinds. You don't even have to say, bye, honey, I'll be back in a little bit. I'm going to the grocery store. You just go. And so they come back and you just disappear somewhere because you're so used to it. You don't think to say, hey, see, I'm going on run some errands. I'll be back in a little bit. And all of a sudden you're just gone and they're like, hey, what the heck? Where'd you go? Oh, sorry. I didn't tell you? Yeah, sorry about that. Right. So it's a little, I mean, those can be huge though. You gotta understand it's like, oh yeah, no big deal. No, yeah, a big deal. Can be a very big deal. Um, that person also may feel abandoned. If they've got abandonment issues, just kind of free of charge already there, natural, that are not natural, that are already an issue for that person when that deployed military person leaves, then oftentimes they feel very abandoned. And if there's ever conflict before a person leaves, that's obviously a huge problem and causes problems for a marriage. There is the thoughts and the fears of is my spouse going to come back in one piece, alive or severely wounded, maimed, and messed up in a wheelchair, loss of limb, those kinds of things. So there's really multiple layers, and I appreciated what Corey said about once the person's left and you've got a couple of days, a few days, however long it takes each family individually to adjust to that person not being there. That's great. It's like fine. I mean, usually, I mean, it's added stress and there's that, but you get a routine, you get going, you get used to it, and it's fine. And then they come back and it throws your routine off. So I was glad she threw that out there and highlighted that. Let's see. I love resilience, and I love to talk about resilience. Resilience is a very interesting concept to me because some people have it and some people don't. It's not that black and white, but when you talk about measuring resilience on a continuum, some people are highly, highly, highly resilient, and some people just aren't. There's a lot of studies working on figuring out why people are and why people aren't, and we could uh, speak eloquently and foolishly at the same time about why people are not resilient. And it would just be our thoughts and our opinion. But there is research being done on trying to figure out how to why are people lack resilience? Why do people lack resilience? And also, how do we boost their resilience? So one thought process when with dealing with military families and the whole PTSD issue altogether is if a person is headed out, or we think they're headed out, the chances of them being deployed are high. Then we do some preventative stuff ahead of time, and you have psychoeducational groups to increase their awareness of emotions and their physical experiences. What we mean by physical experiences is, um, my shoulders tightened up and I didn't even realize it. Let's teaching them to be aware of, okay, what's tight? My stomach's all in knots. It's like, oh. So helping them understand what that means. It won't mean you're scared. It means you're, big tough military men, especially. "Oh, I'm not scared. Yeah, okay, sure you are, but whatever. Everybody experiences fear. Um, it's stress. That maybe you'll receive that term better. Um, let's see. Uh, this teaching, training, counseling process beforehand to help build resilience also focuses a lot on their relationships and uh, the good things in life. The positive things that have happened in relationships, the strength that they have. So you're helping people tap into that inner sense of strength so that they can bounce back from trauma. Um, So word psychoeducation in there twice because it's in they're talking about that a lot in the textbook. Sorry, I would redo it. That I don't like the way that's laid out right there, but this is a very widely accepted and proven to be effective method, and especially when you're talking about resistance to where's resistance? Sorry, somewhere that was previous page. Sorry, resistance to counseling. Well, psychoeducation is like, hey, we're doing a training, guys. Come on in. Okay, cool. We're doing this training. We have to come every day, every once a week for 12 weeks. All right, yes, sir. We'll be there. I mean, it's their culture. They're obedient, and so they're going through this stuff, and it's counseling type stuff, but they're not feeling like they're in counseling, and they're learning and integrating this information into their head. Very powerful, and their defenses are down as well, usually, generally speaking more so in that type of environment. The types of treatment are sorry, are numerous. One is EMDR, eye movement desensitization. Um, oh, I'm drawing a blank. Sorry, EMDR. You can Google it if you're curious enough. And some of you are finishing the sentence for me. Um, the textbook doesn't talk about that one a lot, but other textbooks do. Cognitive behavioral therapy, and there is a type of cognitive behavioral therapy that's called trauma focused, which helps them process these memories and confront these memories and work through them, uh, so that they can begin to reduce their fear. There's also a focus of being aware of what kinds of things externally um, um, tend to trigger their PTSD symptoms, and working through those. Changing the interpretations of, and remember, cognitive behavioral therapy, when the cognitive part at least is changing the way we think, right? So how do we interpret events and situations? So if someone's in a situation and they have to kill, and this little voice inside their head says, thou shalt not murder, you are a murderer, you should not have murdered, you are a horrible person. Um, the cognitive restructuring of that would be different and unique and individualized for each individual, but would have elements of, hey, this is war, and this is war. This is what we do. It's illegal. It's sanctioned by society. It's one of the things that happens in life. I would even go as far as to say it's biblically sanctioned, but whatever. Not every war, but generally speaking, it's not like God's up there going, "Oh no, they're warring." Yeah, in fact, he said there's going to be wars and rumors of wars. There's going to be wars. Yes, usually because of our selfishness, primarily. Um, okay, so that's a little overview on some of the cognitive treatment approaches used, and that is our last slide. This is a short one. This go around, hallelujah, 22 minutes, and a guest speaker. All right, guys, thanks for watching my video. God bless.